Welcome to the Doctor's Office, episode 4. Today is the Ken Lewis interview. I'm really excited about this one. I've been chasing Ken for about 3 weeks now, trying to get him to have a free moment to spare with us. So I'm super stoked for this one. And let's get this thing rolling. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Ford. And every broadcast we do is benefiting a charity. So today's charity is the same charity we had on episode 2. Facebook presented a problem with it. I don't know why it didn't work, but today we got it working. I can see the donation button. So today's charity we're going to donate upon request of Ken Lewis himself is Mission 22. Mission 22 is a charitable organization benefiting the 22 veterans, American Army, Air Force, all those veterans who take their own lives every day. So if you remember the 22 Push-Up Challenge, it's the same charity that does that. All proceeds that you make, donations you make today, go directly to the charity. It doesn't go to me. So mash that button. Show Ken that you appreciate him coming on these broadcasts. And let's get this show rocking and rolling. All right. Ken Lewis. If you don't know who Ken Lewis is, you don't get it. And I say that because I've been friends with Ken on Facebook for, I don't know, maybe like 5 years now. And Ken is one of those people that his wealth of knowledge didn't come from reading online tutorials or watching Pensado's Place. Ken's education, his experience, it comes from the fact that he is a real guy working in the studio, actually performing at a level that most of us only dream about getting to. His primary focus is major label records. Ken is a major label mix engineer, producer, songwriter, and musician with 25 years of experience. He is half of the production team Catalyst. His credits include 19 Grammy wins and a total of 55 Grammy nominations, 7 official Grammy nominations by name, 94 gold and platinum plaque albums, RIAA certified, and 66 Billboard number ones. If you need to go check out his credits, everybody's on there. All your favorite people are on there. It's ridiculous. It's a storied career. And today I'd like to get Ken on, and so we can hear that story. So, without any further ado, let me get Ken invited on here. I saw him, so I'm going to bring him in. Here we go. Do 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 do. I'm adding him. It says I'm adding him. Oh, it didn't work. Oh, guest declined. Ken. Let's try again. We did plan for this. I promise we planned for this. Once again, there he is. There he is.
So, sorry, I had this whole thing set up with my iPad, and then it told me I had to rotate it 90 degrees before I could log on, so I need to rework this out.
Well, Ken, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. What's that?
Headphones?
I don't think I'm going to need headphones. Does it sound like I need headphones?
There's definitely.
Shit. I don't have any.
My voice coming back to your.
It is kind of.
It is.
I don't have any headphones for my iPad Pro. It's I could re-log in on my iPhone.
Can we do that?
Sure.
Awesome.
Sure.
Great.
All right. How do I log out of this?
I'll just quit.
Okay.
Ryan West. All right, guys, I want to make sure that you guys can hear everything we're saying. If I don't have headphones, sometimes for our guest, my voice goes out their speakers and gets re-recorded and then feeds back in. So this wait is totally worth the wait to make sure that you can hear everything he's saying and that he and I can converse. Otherwise, what ends up happening is that I say anything or I try to interrupt him, and it just becomes a garbled mess on his end. So just hang out with me. This is a perfect opportunity to talk about how much I love my wireless earbuds from Apple. Now, this is not a product endorsement that is paid. I just got them for Christmas, and I really love them. But the point is that they come in very handy Bluetooth. You know, the sound quality is just as good as anything else. So if you don't have a pair of these, I would definitely recommend picking them up. It has made grocery shopping a lot more fun. All right. I see a lot of friends in the chat here today. I'm stoked to have you all. Miss Veronica, hey, what's up? Marco, my boy. I see Leroy Gibbs. What's up, dude? Greg Boyd, my homie. Ryan West, my first, my last, my everything. Yeah, buddy. Um, Always cracking me up. Juno, what's up, man? Mark Rees. Billy, what's up? Arlene, what's up, Rich? Um, I see Michael Carter, David Mack, Bobby Sullivan. Hey, Uncle. Patrick Riedman, my bro. Alexander. What's up, guys? Everybody? Okay. As soon as he comes back, we'll get Ken on. Just make sure he's here. Remember, Ken has had so many Grammys and so many platinum plaques that if you guys don't have questions for him, right now everybody watching should be going to Ken's link. It's on my page. Look at his credit reel. It's ridiculous. You have favorite songs. If you're a modern music maker, if you listen to music in the last 20 years, Ken has worked on your favorite records. I guarantee that. So go back and get his credit list out and ask him about this stuff. All right, here we go. Ken is back. And he is coming online. All right. What's up, Marco? What's up, Rick? How's it going, buddy? Johan, what's up? Roy, what's up? Yeah, Ken's credit list is stupid. You know, while we're waiting for him to jump on, one of my favorite Ken Lewis educational videos he did, and if you haven't seen it, go over to his Mix, I think it's Mix Academy Online. We'll get that information from him. But basically, Ken does a lot of work with sampling from vinyl and dissecting that. And there's a whole video he did where he talked about going and digging in and finding extra things to sample. He talks about using mid-side techniques to dissect. It's really incredible when you watch a master at work do their job. You know, on this podcast, I don't love to talk about gear. I like to leave that for other things. So, you know, we'll try our best to stay away from gear chat, although Ken has a ton. Ken, I did just invite you again, so you should be seeing that. All right, welcome back, sir.
You got me?
I got you. I can't hear myself, so we're good.
Okay, I have a headphone in my ear, so I'm good too. I just got to figure out where to
roll.
Oh.
First off, thank you so much for allowing me to have this interview with you. I know there's a lot of content with you out there, but I really appreciate you taking this time.
Hang on. Sorry, I'm like the low-tech guy right now. Okay, hey guys.
Hey. So I was just saying, thank you again for taking this time to let me interview you. I know there's a lot of content. I know how busy you are, so I really appreciate it. And I know everybody online has been really eagerly waiting for this. You're a beast, so thank you very much.
My pleasure. Happy to be here. Hey, everybody.
So as I said today, we're benefiting Mission 22 as our charity, so make sure you guys mash that donate button. Every dollar, every $5 helps. It goes directly to the charity. We're stopping veteran suicide. It's a really big deal. Ken specifically asked me for this charity, so make sure
yes, please.
Ken, do me a favor and plug your social media and plug your website for everybody watching.
Instagram is Ken Lewis Audio School Online. I really don't use Twitter. Facebook, you've already got me. My school is audioschoolonline.com.
Now, is that both the mixing and the musical instruments? Because I remember there was
the musical instruments is musicschoolonline.com. The studio one is audioschoolonline.com.
Awesome.
And so we're in the middle of a big revamp on the Music School Online right now. It's up and working, but in about 2 or 3 months, we're going to relaunch it, and it's going to be way, way better. Awesome. And ASO has been a little bit dormant, but I'm getting back to that pretty soon as well.
Well, it's not like you're not busy or anything.
Yeah, no, that's why it's been dormant. The record business has been very good, so that's where I choose to put the bulk of my time.
I want to jump right in, and I'm going to take. So I know there's a lot of content out there about tricks and techniques and tips and all those things. So what I want to do is I want to talk about you as a person. I want to talk about your story. I want to talk about how you can help train the next generation on a human-to-human level. So let's take it back like babies and pacifiers.
All
What
right.
was the first CDs that you got, first albums you got, that really moved you before you ever thought about making music?
I mean, the first album I ever bought, I think, was AC/DC Back in Black. And so, I mean, if there was a lucky one to pick first, man, that was it.
First one was Young MC Stone Cold Ramen.
Nice. So, but yeah, I mean, my early influences were mostly all rock. And my brother was 10 years older than me, so I would basically steal his records. Neil Young, Elton John, Pink Floyd, Leonard Skinner, like all of those type bands. I was just into all of that kind of music. I didn't really get into hip hop until 1993 when I moved to New York City and started working at Soundtrack Studios. And I mean, if you wanted to be a working engineer in New York City in the 90s, you probably wanted to be doing hip hop, because otherwise you probably weren't working. And so I got to New York and kind of realized that real quickly, and that's where my hip hop education started. And I got educated by the best.
So before that, when you were
Mm-hmm.
a teenager, when you were in elementary, did you do music education in the schools? Where did you get your musical background?
I took guitar lessons from like 10 until I went to college. I took music theory in high school. I played in bands in high school. I'd say that's the bulk of my kind of education. You know, 2 years of music theory in high school, and I ended up testing out of 1 full year of music theory at Berklee College of Music, thanks to my high school ed. So that helped a lot.
Okay, so you went to Berklee.
I did.
Can you tell me about that experience?
I can. I'm gonna flip this over and see if it flips.
Yeah.
It does. Come on. Okay. Am I upside down?
You're upside down, but it's cool.
All right. Well, we'll do this. I gotta find a place to put this that's gonna work.
It's being trendy because all the modern album covers are upside down.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if I can hold this for 2 hours.
Oh.
Yeah. That's the thing. So sorry. What was the question again?
The question is, you went to Berklee College of Music, and
I did.
Tell me about your time there.
So 89 to 91, I went there for music production and engineering. Everybody that goes to Berklee gets a core music education. So I certainly got that. But my main focus, I was there to be in the studio, and I basically was in the studio every moment that I could possibly be in the studio. And you know, like they used to give away free time anytime the studios were had unbooked slots for that night. You would have to line up after lunch at the studio booking window and wait for them to give that time away. So every single day after lunch, I would go and stand in that line and get studio time that night and work on whatever I wanted to work on. I think the other thing that I think I did at Berklee that was really, really smart was, I don't know how they handle things nowadays, but back when I was a student, you were assigned a project. So if you were in an engineering class, you were paired with a producer in a production class, and you would engineer their project for them. And if you were the producer, you would produce and you would pair with an engineer to do that, and vice versa. So, for instance, my first semester that I had to pair with a producer, I did my official pair, and then what ends up happening is a few dozen other producers there's more producers than engineers. So I went to every single producer and I asked them if they needed an engineer, and all of a sudden everybody else had 1 or 2 projects and I had like 10. And that, to me, that's a perfect example of the type of drive that it takes to survive in the real world. And I didn't even know it at the time. I just wanted to do as many sessions as I possibly could. So I just went out and got them. And I didn't really even think of the ramifications of what I was doing or how. I just knew that if there were gigs out there to get, I was going to go get them. And so I think that experience in college actually helped set me up great for life.
What was the transition between high school and college for you where you decided you wanted to go to Berkeley to study audio engineering and producing? What was the hook?
I actually took a semester and stayed home. Home used to be Ohio. And I went to Miami University of Ohio for 2 semesters, and transferred all of my general education credits that I possibly could so I could just focus on music at Berkeley. And then I went to Berkeley and did Berkeley, graduated in 6 more semesters. And the transition from high school to college, it was kind of gradual, because the first one was stay at home college, and I'm just driving to class every day. And then 6 months later I'm off to Boston, and I had never lived in another place before, and never lived in a city, but I loved it. I just the whole experience to me was really expanding and creative, and it was, my time at Berkeley was great. I really loved it.
Did you know John Mayer?
No, he was after me.
Okay.
But Paula Cole was my time.
Oh.
And Abe Laboriel Jr. Yeah, I had some heavy hitters. Who else was there? I always forget names when I'm trying to recall them. A few more will come to me, though. I definitely went to school with some monsters that have found huge names in this business.
Okay, so 1991, you graduate from Berkeley. You're free. They let you out in the world. And 2 years before you begin to work at Soundtrack in 1993. So tell me about those 2 years.
So I went back to Ohio and got an engineering job at a studio in Dayton, Ohio. I was like the overnight engineer. So any work I could bring into the studio for the overnight shift, or any work that they booked for the overnight shift, I was the one that got it. So it was shit work for almost no money, but I was fucking engineering straight out of college at basically the biggest studio in the area.
How did you get that gig?
I sent resumes and personally written cover letters to every studio and studio manager I could find within about a 300 or 400 mile radius.
Cool.
And it just so happened that a studio 40 minutes north of me was the one that responded. And funny enough, the reason that they responded to my resume was not Berkeley. It was the studio that I had interned at, which was Soundtrack Recording, which had studios in Boston and New York. And I had interned in Boston, and the head engineer of this studio that I ended up working in Ohio had worked, the only studio he had ever worked in New York was Soundtrack Studios New York. So he knew that I had come from a quality studio environment based off of my internship. And that's what landed me the gig engineering at that studio in Ohio. Then, so I spent a year doing that. And then in 93, I moved back up to, I moved to New York City, and got a job at Soundtrack New York. And one of the things that helped me get the job at Soundtrack New York was both my internship at Soundtrack Boston, as well as my time over the last year engineering at that studio. So kind of like, but the internship was probably as important as the schooling was.
What did you do during your internship? Because like when I interned at Studio Atlantis on Western in Los Angeles, all I did was janitorial work, and I painted over they didn't let me do anything. Like it was really, I was a runner and I was like janitor for free.
I was mostly that. But there were plenty of times that they allowed me to stay after my shift and stay late and hang on sessions. And I figured that was the trade-off for being, you know, a runner and a grunt, was that I got to be in on professional sessions. And also, you know, I would get to at least set up and break down the sessions. So I wasn't getting opportunities, at least at first, to be a part of them. But eventually, they did let me into a few professional sessions. And at the time, I mean, that was experience that, I mean, even just being in a professional environment was such a different feel than being at school. And it really made me pay attention to what it means to be in a professional environment. How do people carry themselves? What is expected of you? You know, what's kind of the chain of command? Who does what? All of those things, I think, were really kind of important and fascinating to learn. And then all of that intern experience got me my engineering gig. That got me my next engineering gig. So, you know, it's a stair-stepping career for sure.
So you're at Soundtrack in Berkeley, or so you're at Soundtrack after Berkeley in 1993. How long did you work there?
Soundtrack, I was staff for 2.5 years, and then I went freelance.
And what was it that prompted that decision for you?
'Cause the studio manager was a fucking asshole. That's why. If I'm being very honest, and he's still there, and he can still fucking blow me. So, yeah. You know, I mean, here's the really, really sad thing about Soundtrack. I loved most of the people there. I loved my time there, and I would have loved nothing more than, when I went freelance, to have felt like I could return home to the home that I had spent 2.5 years of my life grinding my ass off working at. But that's not how it felt when I left. When I left, he made me feel like I was an outcast. And I guarantee you they lost $1 million in studio revenue, if not 5, because he was too much of an asshole to treat me with respect and make me feel like I could bring clients back there and have a home.
Well, hindsight's 20/20, right? I mean,
yeah. You know, they don't care. They don't fucking care. You know, the studio's still there. The studio does well. Congratulations. It's one of the few that has survived in New York City. You know, most of the people there are absolutely fantastic people, but most studio managers in New York City over the years, I haven't had a whole lot of love for. There's a few gems, but, you know, I don't miss the big studio scene anymore.
What do you think is the reason why? They just have a really tough job, or it just happened to be personalities conflicts?
Well, this is going back in the day. Back in the day, I think it felt like, and I'm sure this wasn't everybody's experience, and it certainly wasn't my experience at every studio, but it felt like, generally speaking, studio managers felt like they had control. Control's not the right word. I don't know, power over like the freelancers that would come through. And I mean, there were times where major studios stole my clients from me and gave them to, and like, you know, I would say I brought a client there for a month, and then for 5 days I am booked on something else, and I asked the studio, hey, you know, put a guy on this for me, I'm coming back in 5 days, and 5 days later it's not my gig anymore. It was like that should happen a few times, and it's like they would never look out for, I think that's the best way to say it. They would never look out for the people who were bringing them the work. And to the extent that when I was able to start bringing work to my house, I was thrilled about it. I had no misgivings whatsoever about taking work from the big rooms, because most of the studio managers were fucking assholes to us. So, you know, the ones that weren't, I still love you. Yeah, still friends with a lot of them. But.
Okay, so you went solo. You said 95 and a half, somewhere in there, somewhere 95.
Yeah.
How was the transition into being freelance? I imagine at this point, were you already starting to get your own kind of brand recognition out there?
No, I was lucky. I had one client who was paying me almost $0, and we were doing one album. And I think, my wife was working at the time, and we were scraping by. And, I was doing that one album, and it lasted just long enough and paid me just enough to find another gig and then another gig. And I definitely did not go freelance with like a lot of buzz or any shit like that. I went freelance because I fucking hated the studio manager and I wanted out, and that was why. It was probably a little bit too soon and early. I hadn't built up a clientele that I knew would follow me, but I figured, I'm talented, I can hustle, I'm gonna figure this shit out, it's time to go. So
Okay, so between 95 and your first real major success, which I'm sure you'll tell us about in a minute, what was how many years was that while you were grinding?
Well, I don't know what you define as a real major success. I mean, I went freelance with a few gold and platinum records.
Okay, let's back up then.
And a few number ones. So my time at my time at Soundtrack, I think I worked on 3 platinum records: Jason's Lyric Soundtrack, Soul Asylum, Let Your Dim Light Shine,
Love
and the Friday Soundtrack.
Ah.
And I'm pretty sure all 3 were also number ones. So I left Soundtrack with a slew of major label credits. Mostly tracking, but some mixed credits, and 3 platinums and 3 number ones on my resume when I went freelance. And I think that's something that today is just, I mean, I get it. There's just not a whole lot of big studios to work in anymore like there were with me, but all these guys who are just like, I want to be a mix engineer, like, great, but you say that like you want to be a mix engineer on my level, but it took me, a long time to get here and just a shit ton of work. And how are you gonna just say that and then make it happen? You can't just speak it into existence. You have to put yourself into a position to win. Like you're sitting at Sound Kitchen.
Well, but this is a commercial lease. I pay my room, so I'm free.
I don't care. Well, you put yourself in a position to win. You had to spend money to do it, right?
Every month.
I spend money to put myself in a position to win all the time.
I know.
Most people don't. Or not enough, or not the right, or, you know what I mean? Like, that's step one. You got to be in the right place. And, you can make a name for yourself online mixing today. Sure, absolutely. I make a ton of money mixing online. And I have clientele all over the world, and I love doing it. But it's taken me, 2 decades to get here. So, I mean, I started mixing online in 2002. So it's 2019. I mean, there's, Sound Better's only been around for 2 or 3 years. So, it's a tough ascension for anybody who wants to try and do this. But I think if you put yourself in the right position, if you want to be in major label land, you almost always either have to be attached to an artist in that world, or you have to be where the work is coming through, because it's not going to come to you otherwise.
I always thought there was 2 main ways to get your first major label credits. The first would be, like you said, working at a studio on the totem pole somewhere to get those credits to start building, because the artists are coming to the location, so you're tagged to the location. Or you have to scout it yourself and make these relationships and then organically go with them in an artist development situation.
Right.
Is that about right?
I think those are the 2 main ones. And I mean, I got my first credits from being a staff engineer at a major studio that did major label work, and a lot of it. but also, like, right now, me and Brent is the other half of Catalyst. Me and Brent are uh, producing an artist that I don't know if you could call it developing. He's incredible, but we've developed the project. Is the Des Rocks project, and it's basically me, Brent, and Danny Rocco, who's the artist. Danny Rocco is Des Rocks, um, and it's most of the time it's the three of us in a room just creating. Now, Danny's not signed to a major yet, but it's inevitable that it's going that direction. Now, if I were somebody who didn't have any major credits going on right now, and I had managed to put myself in this situation, having developed an artist and a project from scratch that now was being sought after by a major label, I'm attached to that project. I'm coming with it. So, hopefully I'll work with this artist for the next 20 years. But at bare minimum, I'm attached to whatever the first album is going to be. I'm attached. My name is forever attached to this artist. So if he goes on to great success, uh, even if I'm not a direct part of the future great success, it's still a great credit for me. It still does what you want it to do. Like a perfect example of that would be Ariana Grande. Me and Brent wrote, recorded, produced, mixed the whole thing. Ariana's first EP that she ever did. Um, she went on to be a huge, huge fucking star, and I still know her, and we still keep in touch. So you never know that if that had been my first credit, that may have helped really open a lot of other doors. So I think it's you can go that direction, develop an artist. It's a tough direction. It's almost always unsuccessful. It's almost always um, artists just it's just so many personalities, and I don't know. I've seen artists make the stupidest decisions to end their own career so many times. It's just mind numbing
Can you,
the
can you
decisions that are
say
made sometimes.
for those without telling names? Is there a way
What's that?
can you expound on a few of those bad decisions without telling names?
Uh, I mean, there was not an artist that I developed, but this would be a perfect example. Would be so. I'm not gonna name his name, but he was an R&B artist signed to a major label. Um, in the exact same lane as Chris Brown, and his album was fire, absolute fire, and uh, and it was gonna come out right after Chris Brown had beaten the shit out of Rihanna, so you couldn't have timed it better. And the label kind of fucked up the release of one of his singles, so as they're ramping up for the second single, he's in my studio on the phone with a radio station in like Kansas City or something like that, doing a live interview bashing his label. And he's not the only one the only artist I've seen do this. K Michelle just did that to Atlantic Records the week that her last album came out that I produced on. And guess what? The album tanked. I don't know if it was going to tank anyway, but whenever an artist thinks that they're more powerful than their label, they're not. Unless they're like unless they're like the franchise player, the label's just going to shut that shit down. So I've seen, from an artist ruining their own career perspective, I've seen that happen a lot. And when you equate to how stupid you have to be to end your own career after you've gotten the major label deal, you can imagine what happens behind the scenes to developing artists that already think they've got a little bit of shine or a little bit of whatever it is. I mean, the I love doing it. I wish it was easier to do, but it's mostly usually ends in heartbreak. But the Des Rock shit is going great. We're crushing that shit.
Well, we're going to talk
So,
about. I have that on my list, but that's much closer to now. I'm still want to go back in the early years still because I think it's really fascinating to learn about your journey. Okay, so when was your first foray into working directly with A&R people?
New York. Well, the studio I worked at in Ohio, We got a couple A&R guys, but mid-level guys, not real like the serious guys. But guys on their way up. But in New York, I saw them a lot. I mean, I met Craig Kelman and Rich Christina in 1993. Rich Christina is now, I think he runs Sony Music Publishing, or he's number 2 or number 3 if he's not top dog. And Craig Kalman's been the head of Atlantic Records since forever. Those two started at Big Beat Records, and I was making records as an engineer with them in 1993 at Soundtrack. And soon after that, Craig went on to become president of Atlantic, and he brought Rich with him. And the next job Rich went to after Atlantic was EMI Publishing and then to Sony Publishing. And Craig is still, now he's chairman of Atlantic. So, I mean, I met those. So you never know who you're going to meet, like, in the Ascension. That's the other great thing about being in a big studio environment where major label artists come through. It's not only the artists, the A&R guys, the managers, you know, other artists are coming to visit. Like, it's just a great place to meet people. But yeah, I mean, you'd meet A&R guys all the time, especially in the studios, because they'd always want to. We didn't have the internet, you know. If you wanted to hear it, you either needed to go where it was able to be heard or have somebody bring it to you. And back then, you know, without the internet, you had to book a whole different day to recall a mix. So you would do a mix, and if the A&R guy and the manager and the artist was smart, they would be there at the end of the mix to hear it so that they could get all of their changes and revisions in, because recalls were very expensive and record companies didn't want to pay for them. Yeah, so it was kind of like a more, there was more finality to the end of a session back then than there is now. You can always kind of go back and recall shit now with little problems. But
how important were those relationships with the A&R people that you developed after that, you know?
I don't know, not very. Not very. I like A&R guys. Some of them have been really great to me over the years, but I mean, I think most things happen between the artist and the manager. And as an engineer or mixer, most of your relationships are probably going to be built with producers more than they're going to be built with, unless like in a, say, like a Des Rock situation. Like, you know, I'll probably mix it, even all of this, of course, me and Brent mix the stuff that we produce, but I'll probably end up mixing a lot of like other things that, you know, if somebody else produces for him, I would mix for that too. You know, you just never know. I think I've totally lost track of the train of thought of the question.
It was very important to develop relationships with artists and managers more than
Right. So, yeah, I mean, some artists have, you know, like, this is my guy, he mixes all of my stuff. So it's important to try and develop any of those kind of relationships. But I mean, let's face it, if the artist has that relationship, the A&R guy doesn't. So the usually it's, I have found it's the artist or the manager picking the mixer. A&R guys, sure. I don't know, for some reason A&R guys don't hire me much. I wish they did. Hey, A&R guys, hire me. I would love to work for you. I'm really good.
What about as a producer? What do you think it's the same?
Yeah, I don't. I think it's more so. And not with everybody. I mean, some A&R guys are really tied into projects and can bring specific producers to a project, and probably do all the time, but they're probably bigger producers than I am. And therein lies the problem. I think.
Do those exist?
Yeah.
Strictly on a number?
I mean, if you just looked at my production resume, it's middling at best. I mean, I've got some nice names on there, but I'm not, you know, I haven't produced any monster hit records yet. So, I mean, I feel like I have. They just didn't become monster hit records. So, you know, that's the way it goes. But but I feel like most of my work with as a producer is still networking directly with managers and artists. I mean, every now and then a label will, an A&R guy will plug us into something. Um, it just doesn't happen as much as you might think that it would.
Okay. So what's a strategy to begin doing that relationship of plugging directly to artists and managers?
I have a manager. So I'm I'm a bad person to ask because I'm always busy. So I'm not out there networking. If I was slow, I would be networking my ass off. But I'm never slow. I never don't have work. So, I have a manager. My manager is out there networking on my behalf on the daily, and he's great at it. So, but I also don't rely on him to bring me my work either. I mean, he brings in some work, but if he didn't, I would still be fully booked.
Hmm.
Um, so, uh, I don't know that I know how to get out there as and make those connections now. The world is a totally different place than when I was coming up through it. I mean, I think Sound Better is a good place to start. You know, if you can get a foothold on Sound Better, I think most people can't.
Yeah.
Um, but my production partner Brent Colatalo, he's crushing it on Sound Better. He does great.
I've
So
list for over a year now. I've been approved, but waitlist.
really, oh, so you can't even get on anymore.
Well, no, I'm on the basic, like you can find me there, but I got approved for a pro membership, but I'm still in the whole, like I paid the little money and they're like, okay, so you're approved for a pro membership. We'll call you when we've got space.
No shit.
Yeah.
I see when I heard about Sound Better, it was like in its infancy, and they invited me to be on it, and I love the people. They're really nice people, and they're really good at what they do. Um, and they've built a really amazing platform. I just didn't need it. So, um, I think, I mean, back then it like they would have taken anybody. So, nowadays I think it's probably just obviously obviously completely oversaturated. So
Yeah.
maybe that's not even a path that, you know, up and coming people can do anymore either. But I don't know.
I don't know. I'll let you know.
Make it, you know, there's got to be a way to make a name for yourself. And there's always the way to, you know, go to a big city and get in a big studio and meet people.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing like the personal approach. You know, who
So
you meet face to face,
when
so
it
much
comes
more
to
powerful.
when it comes to expanding your brand and advertising your services, generally when I ask people at your level or wherever, they say the primary part of my business comes from word of mouth. Now, I like that phrase because to me, word of mouth means that your brand has gone far and wide. You spread it wide enough that it has a life of its own. People talk about you and they refer their friends. But that's still advertising. So, how much do you put into advertising your own brand? Because you said you spend money on it. How much do you put into advertising your own brand versus can you be passive and just let your brand take care of itself?
Um, well, I think spending money on your brand. I don't know that's not promotion money, but it could be gear, it could be developing an artist, it could be, you know, going out to LA to songwrite for a week. You know, hotels and rental cars aren't free. Even if I can find co-writers that have their own studios, there's costs involved in that. And I think every year there's any number, and even, you know, studio insurance, you know, gear up, you know, the Waves update plan. My God, what a crappy expensive thing that is. Um, so, you know, to me, those are all like self investments. The promotion, I think, uh, I have a talented manager who knows a lot of people. That in of itself is a huge aspect of whatever, you know, promotion is. Um, I always try to do great work. So I think that, um, I mean, there are so many people that I knew when they were either nobodies or real young on the come up that, that, you know, I worked my ass off for then, and all of a sudden when they were the ones getting put on, they took me with them because I paid them just as much respect as a nobody independent as I did the majors. And I mean, I'm talking guys like Just Blaze, Kanye West, uh, you know, um, I'm sure there's a ton of others, but you know, guys like that, I met them real early and forged solid relationships, both producers. So, you know, I met Kanye when he was a producer. He wasn't an artist. He became an artist and took me with him. Um, so, you know, going back to your how do you get credits, I mean, I was already credited and on and working with him, but had I not been, you know. But I think I'm meandering off topic. What was your original question?
Well, so when did you, as an artist, and I say that as a mixer, as a producer, when did you first feel, and I say this with a caveat because I know that we all have a certain sense of confidence and self-confidence about what we do and why we do it. But when did you objectively look at yourself and feel like, yes, I'm kicking ass, my mixes are great, I feel good about what I do? When was that for you?
I'll let you know. No, honestly, a long time ago. But that definitely, there was a long transition period. I think everybody in this field questions themselves and questions their quality of work and their abilities and their talent level and their, you know, whatever. It's refreshing that I don't feel that anymore, because for many years I certainly did, and I think most do. Um, I don't know when the change was, uh, but I will say this much. Um, Certainly, when I started this practice as a tracking engineer, where anytime I would get called into a session, which sometimes was a mix session, you know, even though I was a tracking engineer, I would certainly mix some things. Not everybody wanted to pay top dollar to have, you know, Tony Maserati mix their shit. Um, but uh, damn it, what was the question?
Was when did you start really feeling good about the music you're putting out?
Oh, so yeah, and I remember what I was going to tell you. So basically, what I was going to tell you is every time I ever walked into a session, I basically walked in with the attitude and confidence that I was the best person in the world to be sitting in that chair in that room on that day doing that work. And nobody was more, you know, I should be the one sitting in that chair. Now, you can call that arrogance or cockiness or whatever, but I think you have to carry yourself with a certain amount of self-confidence and self-respect in order to do great work. Because you have to, you know, belief starts with you. If you don't believe what you're doing, if you look nervous, if you're a tracking engineer and you're cutting vocals or you're cutting anything, and the person you're recording sees a little bead of sweat on your, or, you know, or a little shaky hand or a little, you know, just nerves, that makes them nervous. Now they're like, well, fuck, did I pick the right person? Do I want this person recording me? Like, you know, it filters into everything. So whether or not it's even real, if you can just get yourself to believe it, you know, and again, don't make it an arrogance thing. It's I put in the work. I deserve to be here. I'm the one who should be in this room. And I think that attitude has carried for so long into my career to the point where one day I was just like, oh, I am actually really fucking good at what I do. And I don't really have to think about it much anymore. It's just very second nature. And I think that's probably the turn when it really became super second nature is when I just stopped second guessing. I don't listen to my mixes now and critique them or judge them, or I listen to them and I enjoy them. And it took a long time. It's awesome way to get to, because I know a lot of us struggle with that kind of stuff.
Speaking of listening to your own mixes, do you remember the first time you heard a production or mix that you did solo on radio?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, Dawn Penn, the No 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 remix. She was a huge reggae artist, and I had no idea who she was. And her producers were these two huge Jamaican producers named Steely and Clevie. I had no idea who they were, and I was on staff at Soundtrack at the time, and I was booked as the staff engineer to record the remix, and they liked me, so they kept me on for the mix. And I was 23 years old, new, and but had a fair amount of experience from Berkeley and from my studio in Ohio, so it wasn't like I was new to sitting in the chair. I was just young. And we did recorded and mixed the Dawn Penn No 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 remix, and I remember walking down the street in Astoria, Queens, on like a Saturday afternoon on a bright sunny day, and this car rolls down, like, this is like a New York street, like out, Queens, busy New York street, and summertime, and this car rolls with its windows down, and like this system just thumping this fucking song down the street, and you can see the people, like, reacting to the song as it's going. Like, you can tell this is a fucking hit, and I'm just like, that was the first time I'd ever heard or seen anything like that happen. And then that same song, I got married the next year and went to Antigua for my honeymoon, and my wife and I are on the beach, and I'm getting my hair braided, and by like the hair braiding ladies, there's three of them standing around, and they're asking me what I do, and I'm telling them I do music, and so I tell them I worked on the Dawn Penn No No No, and all three of them, like, it was rehearsed, just like in time, in key, in rhythm. They always go no no no, and I was like, wow, music is really fucking powerful. That's cool.
That's cool.
So yeah, that was wild.
Okay, so I know I've heard you tell me this story before, briefly. I don't think it was over video. I think it was maybe over Facebook Messenger. But tell me about the formation of your relationship with Kanye West and the first time he came to you to work.
I met Kanye through Just Blaze. I met Just Blaze as an intern. He was an intern. I was a freelancer. And I was mostly freelancing out of this studio called The Cutting Room in New York City, which is still there. Dave Crafa owns it, dear friend. That's where Justin Smith, aka Just Blaze, started as an intern, moved up to assistant studio manager, and I always helped him there. I had no idea he was a producer. Always treated him with respect as an intern, and as he moved up the ladder, continued to do so. And he was always just the guy around. And one day he comes to me, he's like, "Yo, Ken, I have this meeting with LL Cool J's management tomorrow, and I need to play them some beats, and I really don't know how to mix. Is there any way you could stay after your session tonight and mix, maybe mix one of them for me?" And I'm like, "I didn't know you were a producer. That's great news. Sure, I'll stay." So I stayed, mixed both beats. This is analog reel to reel days. This is not computer. So, the shit takes time. So I stayed and mixed both beats.
Did he just bring in a drum machine and like link up, or did he have tapes?
Oh no, he had already had the beats recorded onto 24-inch 2-track. I just had to mix them.
Okay.
So I stayed after my session and mixed those two beats. His meeting went great. He started doing work. He started kind of building his name over time. Eventually he became the Just Blaze. And he and Kanye were managed by G. Roberson at the time at one point. And I had been not only mixing a lot for Justin, but I had been playing a lot on his productions. So G. Roberson and I should remember his name. He's Jay Brown. Jesus, he's only one of the biggest people in the frickin' music industry. G. Roberson and Jay Brown called me up one day in 2002, and they say, "Do you know who Kanye West is?" And I'm like, I mean, he was young at the time. But he had produced maybe one or two hit singles at the time. I was like, it's like, yeah, I know who he is. They're like, cool. We need a guy who knows both rock and hip hop in a genuine way, who can recreate a sample for us. And it was a Paul McCartney Wings sample, and I had never done anything like that in my entire life. And but I was like, yeah, of course I can do that. Send it on over. So they sent me the sample to recreate. I smashed that, and it took like 3 days of like inventing every new trick I could invent, because I didn't know how to. It was, learning on the job. There was no, instruction manual or YouTube video or rule book to teach you how to recreate samples.
And what year was it?
It was 2002. And so I did that, smashed it. They loved it. They ended up having me do a bunch more, and then I ended up getting called. I ended up doing a bunch of stuff on the College Dropout. Some of it was sample recreation. Some of it was just music creation. And that was the great thing. The sample recreation was the door opener to my relationship with Kanye. But since then, most of the stuff I do for Kanye now is like producing choirs and shit. It's like, of course I didn't work with him on any of the 2018 or 2019 stuff. So, but yeah, I mean, Kanye has asked me to do the strangest, weirdest stuff of my entire career, which is awesome, because it basically has turned me into like a complete chameleon. There's really nothing that I don't feel like I could do very well.
Is that relationship with Kanye mostly like remote voice relationship, or do you get to be in the room with him?
So again, I haven't worked with him recently, but it's a mixture of both, but it's mostly me remote. And I mean, there have been times where he's been in China or Paris or Hawaii or some weird remote location where he'll, send me something to work on. We'll have a conversation about what he wants. I'll do it, send it back. And I think it works really well for both of us. So, we'll be in the same room together when we need to be. But like, I mean, one of my favorite things I've ever done in my entire career was a remote gig with him, which was the horn section of All of the Lights. And he sent me a little voice memo of a simple melody line that he wanted, and he called me up and we had like a 2-minute conversation. And he basically said he wanted to sound like a marching band in a stadium. And that was the entire extent of the creative conversation. And I just went and brought in the horn players. Danny Flam played almost every horn on that, brilliant player. And I think Tony Grusso played the real high trumpet notes. And that was all remote, based off of a 2-minute conversation and 0 changes. What my first submission went, and they didn't even tell me when I first sent it. Like 2 months went by and I never heard anything. They didn't ask for any revisions. They didn't tell me it was approved, nothing. So like 2 months later, they call me for another gig for a different song on My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. And I asked, I can't remember if it was Noah or who I was talking to at the time. I was like, so you guys didn't like that horn section for Ghetto University? And All the Lights used to be called Ghetto University, was the working title at the time. And they're like, no, we love that shit. Oh, it's perfect. And I'm like, oh, thanks for telling me. So
he just like threw it in an MPC and just made the beat around it, probably, right? He didn't even like think twice about it. He was like, cool, that's what I got, and he just went with it.
Oh no, they sent me a basic beat. So they sent me a loop to do horns too. And he sent me like a voice memo single melody line without embellishment. Just like that's literally, it was like a $20 Casio keyboard making that sound. And he emails me an MP3 of that. We have a 2-minute conversation, off to the races. And then what you heard on all of the brass on that record is what you heard my final work was.
Fantastic.
So, yeah, I got lucky.
Having worked with Kanye enough now, this is one of my favorite questions, and it's a real hard one, so it's okay if you need to think about it for a second. Witnessing his creative genius, witnessing the way he worked, if you could cherry pick one lesson that you would teach us that he does well, what would it be? What's his great?
I think there are so many from him, certainly. One of his greatest talents is something that Just Blaze shares as well, and that is they both, when everybody else thinks a record is done, they both have the ability to find a way to elevate it much further. And All of the Lights is another perfect example of this. So, Kanye calls me and Alvin down to Germano Studios in New York City one night, and I had already done the horn section. So the horn section had been there for a while. This was maybe 6 months after that. Me and Alvin Fields, so me and Alvin are the ones that chanted on Power. So the that's me and Alvin. We also chanted on Lost in the World. And because we did those 2 chants and Kanye really loved those, he asked us to come down and sing on All of the Lights. So the whoa, 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 on All of the Lights near the end, whoa, 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 whoa. That's me and Alvin started that. And then that became, if you ever see the credits for All of the Lights, there's like this insane list of like 20 heavy hitter, like Alicia Keys, Elton John, Ryan Leslie, all these crazy people. And me and Alvin are the last 2 names on that list. So we ended up singing on that. But I can't remember what the initial question was.
You said the thing you love about Kanye and Just Blaze was
right. Right.
And see past that.
So the night that we go down to sing on All of the Lights, the horns were done, the record was ready to mix. So I was told. Ready to mix, Rihanna wasn't on it yet. Kid Cudi and Fergie weren't on it yet. So you hear the all of the lights in here, baby. That wasn't there. That did not exist in the song when me and Alvin went down to the studio that night to cut the whoa vocals. So that reinforces the idea that Kanye heard this, what everybody else was calling a finished song, and somehow found a way to elevate it well beyond that. I mean, the Rihanna hook absolutely solidified that song as a Song of the Year nomination. I don't think it would have gotten one otherwise. And the bridge, like that whole bridge that was created with Cudi and Fergie, that really wasn't all put together there either. So, and I've seen Just Blaze do the same thing countless times where, even on mix day, he'll hear the song, he'll have me mix the song for like 8 fucking hours. And then he'll come in and he'll listen to it and be like, go to his assistant, I need my MPC and my turntable and my this, and this. And I'm like, oh God. 16 hours later, we finished the mix with a brand new production. It's like a lot of that kind of stuff where these guys just have the ability to envision things in a way that exceeds what most other people are able to do, in my experience, which has been a great lesson for me because it makes me attempt to think more like that.
Can you quantify it? What is it?
I don't think you can quantify it. I think what would be a good descriptor? I think one of the real skills of being a professional mixer or producer or songwriter or fill in the blank is knowing where the finish line is. And I think the finish line looks different to guys like that than 99% of other creatives, myself included. So, you know, for whatever reason, certain people just have this extra vision of what things could be beyond what they are. And I always try, I think as a producer on the daily, that's always been what I've done. I've listened and I've gone, what is this? What could it be? And then if I think it could be something great, then you work and you figure out, the path to get there. But I think that's one of his greatest gifts for sure.
That's good. That was a really good one. The finish line looks different to guys like that. I like that line.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so where do you find creative inspiration in those moments when you're trying to re-envision the finish line? Where does it come from?
Well, a lot of different places. I have a place on the beach down in Ecuador that I have a studio, and I go down there to just be creative and have a change of pace, and that's a hugely inspirational place. Again, the investing in your career, that place was a huge investment in my career because I would not have bought it without the component of I can have a studio down here, I can come down here and do high level work whenever I want to. And I can bring major artists down here if I want to, and it's going to be, we're going to be able to make great quality music and recordings. So that component of that was a huge financial investment in my music career. So back to what we were talking about way earlier. But the inspiration down there is just it's just a totally different thing. And I think as a writer, it's almost always super creative to get out of your comfort zone into whatever zone inspires you, if that's New York City or the beach or solitude or a rock concert or whatever it is, and just try and connect with your creativity. If having a production partner is hugely helpful for kind of getting past roadblocks and stuff creatively, because me and Brent can, and anytime we want, we can bounce ideas off of each other. It's always great to bounce ideas off of an artist. I think that's maybe one misconception about what is production. I think a lot of artists call themselves producers when maybe they shouldn't, because to think that an artist shouldn't have production input into their work is ludicrous, but to refer to that input as production credit is sometimes odd, sometimes not, sometimes it's utterly absolutely justified. But so many times I've had the producer put themselves as mixed by Ken Lewis and the producer, and I'm just thinking, like, really, stay in your lane, I'm staying in mine. So but I think a lot of those kind of things will come from getting around roadblocks, and what will come from just bouncing ideas off of others and whatnot. So.
Okay, so let's talk about Catalyst. When in the timeline did you form Catalyst, and how did you meet Brent?
Boy, I've known Brent since 2003, I think. Maybe. I think I've known him longer than that. He started working with me in 2003. But Brent went to Berkeley. In the summers between when he went to Berkeley, he came to New York to first intern at Campo Studios, which was a 3-room SSL facility. And then the next summer, he split time between interning for me and interning at Avatar, which just closed. And at the end of his second summer, he was getting ready to go back to school. And I was like, no, dude, stay here. Let me teach you how to make real records. Stick around. So he was originally basically like my assistant, but then I started giving him kind of creative tasks, and I started challenging him, like, okay, this is the song I'm producing. Here's a piece of gear, like maybe a Yamaha motif or something. Pick me out 20 sounds that might go into this production, and and the stuff. So you do, like, little, and it's not like he knows he's being challenged. It's just part of his daily job. But I started putting all these creative challenges in front of him just to see, like, how does he think? What does he pick? How does his brain work? What is he coming up with? And he just kept giving me all these like great choices, and I was like, huh. So we just started making music together, and then that's been over a decade now.
So what does
So
that process look like for the two of you? Because I've always I've had a hard time envisioning really co-producing with someone. Like I remember when I was young and I wasn't who I am today. I was a baby, and I had a crew, and we were making rap records in my studio apartment on the fourth floor in Hollywood while I was going to college. And we'd come back, and I had my buddy Golden, and we would literally have a drum loop on an MPC, and it was just going, and we would like tag in like it was WWE, and like it would just flow. Is that what it's like for you? What's the process like?
sometimes I think Brett and I know each other uh, so well at this point, and the other thing is we trust each other so well at this point that a, a lot of the work that we do is separate. So he has his own room, I have my own room. He'll usually start something and hand it off, or vice versa. And then as we kind of get closer,
We have a temporary interruption. I think his internet is cycling. If anybody's just tuning in, today's broadcast is benefiting Mission 22. Mission 22 is a charity that specifically goes with veterans who commit suicide. I guess the average is 22 American veterans commit suicide every day. And so any money donated today because of this broadcast, so anything helps. $1 helps, $2 help. It looks like Ken just jumped offline. I have a feeling his phone battery died, or he lost reception. Either way, I'll get him back as fast as possible. So, if you're just tuning in again, I'm Dr. Ford. I try to host these. Eventually, I'm going to turn this into a podcast, interviewing people at the top of their game. So, if you've got questions, it's tricky while I'm in the flow with someone to get these questions in. However, I'll do my best. And of course, if you have someone you want to see on one of these broadcasts, or if you're someone watching who'd like to be on one of these broadcasts, please send me a message. Let's talk. I do plan on having this be a recurring series that keeps going on. So, of course, if you're just, there he is. Ken, I'll bring you back in. Stand by. He's almost here. He's almost here. I can see the box on my screen. All right, well, as he's coming back, I don't know what's going on with that. Probably a funny internet connection. But like I said, if you are someone who wants to be on one of these, hit me up in the private message. And of course, you'd like to see, I'm, again, here to help. Now, I was asked by someone to do another group, one of these, where we just sort of open it up and I bring on people in the audience to talk. So I'm happy to do one of those. Maybe I can do one of those next week where it's just an open forum discussion and we bring people on and we'll keep talking. So stay tuned for that. I do actually have a few people in mind that have hit me up that I would like to get on, and a few artists. And let me try and get Ken again. Ken, if you're watching, it's not letting me invite you on, which is very strange. So we'll just keep rolling. So if anybody has any questions, let's go back. I'm going to scroll back for some questions because I did see a few. Veronica asked if you have any Barry Sachs recording recommendations. Yeah, I'm sure we can hook you up with some people on that. Let me see here. All right. Sorry, I'm scrolling back for questions. So Jason Marshman says, you have to sell your soul to the labels once you're signed. Be careful about putting your signature down on paper. Beware. I disagree with that. I'm going to openly disagree with that. I think the idea of selling your soul was started by people who were either jealous or misunderstood what's actually happening. Now, there are horrible record deals out there where people get into a situation where they're taken advantage of. However, provided that you did your due diligence and got a lawyer and reviewed the contract and didn't just sign on the dotted line without reading anything, there shouldn't be a situation you enter in. And I believe strongly that in 2019, 2020, major label deals aren't coming to people that are fresh-faced. They're only coming to people with dedicated fan bases, and they're only coming to people who have proven that they are a fairly low-risk model. And what I mean by that is, I don't believe that major record label deals are going to people who are untested and proven. And even in that location, I believe that they're taking and they're holding on to these kids for a while and watching them, and then they're working on their social media, they're building their fan base and following. I promise you, in 2019 and 2020, the single most important currency you can have as an artist is going to be your independent fan base. You can easily open any doors and negotiate the proper record deal contract, publishing deal contract, if you have some weight behind you. If you've got no fans, if you've got 1,000 friends on Facebook and that's it, if you've got 1,000 people on Instagram and that's it, if you don't have a YouTube channel with any amount of serious videos, you're not going to command any type of a good record deal because you're a high-risk situation. So I would just say, for anybody who wants to talk about that, I'm more than happy to open up a whole discussion on that. I don't know where Ken is, so we can just keep going on this. Again, the currency of 2019 and 2020 absolutely is fan base, fan base, fan base. And I say that because I can tell you for experience, I was offered not too long ago, I had a cell phone battery company, and so they were making portable external recharging batteries for your devices. My entertainment attorney and I were talking about stuff, and he was working with a company that did this, and they were about to start going into Kickstarter. And so he hooked me up with them. They were able to put thousands of dollars into a holding account, and they hired me to bring in an artist. And so I spent a lot of time scouting for artists that had a very large fan base. And when it got to a certain level of likes, certain level of subscribes, it was able to garner a certain amount of money from the battery company, which then they offered that artist a split. So for anything that they were able to generate through her fan base, she got a cut of the sales. Additionally, they paid for the production, paid for the music video. So, fan base, fan base, fan base. Now, Ken is back. Welcome back, Ken.
How are you?
Okay.
Yep, battery died. I didn't
right.
even know it was waning.
I'll snip that in the podcast version. So,
great.
Okay, so we were talking about the fact that you and Brent have two different rooms, and you kind of ping pong songs back and forth.
Right. A lot of times, we usually don't create together from scratch. I don't know. We're both good at creating. I don't feel like we reinforce each other from ground zero level. But whenever one of us stumbles upon a great idea, then we usually kind of flesh it out and go in. As producers, sometimes we will divide up duties a little bit just to kind of keep workflow going. Like I'm usually the vocal guy, so I'm usually producing, recording, comping vocals, backgrounds and all of that kind of stuff. So Brent's usually more of like the starter, and I'm kind of like the I'll pick it up on the vocals and then finish music and bring it home.
Okay. Well, let's transition then to producing and recording vocals. One of the, I think, most delicate things in the whole process is producing vocals.
100%. Yeah.
I said in a recording Rockstars with Liz Shaw, I said, to me, I've kind of found that the voice, the human voice, is the one instrument in the studio process that is 100% altered by the emotional state of the person wielding the instrument, meaning the singer. And if you say the wrong thing to them, you can absolutely change their performance. Whereas like a guitar player, they play it and they're like, oh, the guitar's out of tune. They tune the string, or they change the pedal, or they switch guitars. A vocalist can't do that. So give me the vocal producing 101.
So for anybody that wants to really go in depth with this, I have a whole school, audioschoolonline.com. I have a whole vocal bundle that will show you a whole heck of a lot about what I know about vocals. In that bundle, there's one called, I think it's called Pro Audio Vocal Recording or something like that. And I basically go through step by step the exact way that I set up for a vocal session, which I think is crucially important. And I think it's something that a lot of people don't think about, to the extent that I think one of the biggest lessons in that is don't ever put the vocalist behind the microphone until the microphone is checked, working perfectly, all of your levels are set, and their headphones and them in it sound like a record. And until they can put on the headphones, get that experience, immediately start singing and feel like they're singing to a finished record or whatever the best version of that you can put in their headphones is. I think that's step one. If you're checking your mic levels with the artist behind the mic, you're doing it wrong. If you're I think from a, like, you know, vocal production is half psychology, and I go to great lengths to establish vibe in the room. You know, the right lighting, music stand for lyrics if they need it, and sometimes I'll do crazy things like so I had this artist that I was developing. 16-year-old girl, had never been in love, and had never lost anybody close to her, and she had to sing this song about love and terrible tragic loss. And how do you connect to that? So there was this one of her favorite movies was The Fault in Our Stars, which was a movie about two teenagers with terminal cancer who fell in love in support group, but they both know that they're going to die. So while we were doing vocals, which usually was late at night, the studio was pitch black except for my 32-inch monitor, which was like 4 feet away from her and me. I cut vocals right next to the console, and I had Googled the saddest scenes from The Fault in Our Stars, and I was running them on loop in front of her while she was performing the song, singing. And I had the audio off, of course, but I used that to help her channel the right emotional state for that kind of an event. Because how does the 16-year-old girl who's never experienced anything remotely like that find that? How do you connect with that? So putting her into the experience of saying, hey, you're now the lead character in this movie. Put yourself into the feature film and act what you think she's going through. And how, I mean, there was no other way that I can envision having gotten the level of performance out of her that I got. Aside from doing that, it's like, most people throw up a microphone, take a few takes, and that's, you get what you get. And that's, maybe you come back another day and you try a few more takes and you get what you get. I mean, shit, there are some times that I'll spend just mind-numbing amounts of time on vocals, because if the vocal doesn't connect, nothing else is going to connect. I don't care how good the music is, except for, party songs and shit like that. But if it's a song that the vocal needs to connect, that's, you got to get that right. And it's crucially important. And there's different levels of what getting it right means. So, I think there's a real artistry and I think it's, producing vocals, I think, is becoming a bit of a lost art. And, but it's something I really take pride in.
So are you just shooting from the hip the whole time? Are you just sort of experiencing it and then just giving critiques and keep going until you get what you want?
Yeah. So I cut vocals, right? So like where you're sitting at your console, the vocalist would be about 3 feet, yeah, right over there, or on my with me it's the other side, but literally right off of the edge of the console, and I never look at the artist or vocalist while they're singing. I try and make a point to purposely look away so that if they ever glance in my direction, they don't feel like they're being judged or whatever. But it's a great say you're at the end of the chorus and you have 4 bars before they start singing verse 2. I can be giving them direct instructions in those 4 bars that might completely change the way that they sing verse 2 in real time, and that immediacy is just my favorite way I've ever cut vocals. I have a quiet studio, and I'm another investment. I spent a lot of money to make sure that I had a real quiet room, but it's the best way I've ever felt like I've cut vocals. It's just, as a producer, it's hands down.
So you're on headphones too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've heard some people say different effects during tracking can alter pitch and alter performance. Do you subscribe to that, or you just get
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know about pitch. Maybe. I mean, I guess if they can't hear themselves right, or if there's too much latency or something like that, I think it could affect pitch. But like the Des Rocks project, I try to dial in his voice when we're recording as close to what it's going to sound like on the finished record as possible. So if you listen to any of the kind of saturated vocal sounds on any of the Des Rocks records, those started during the recording process. They weren't committed to. You could, they're a plug-in, so you could tweak them at any time. But it's that, going towards like how I got the other vocal performance. It's the same thing. Anything that you can do to help enhance the vibe that the artist is experiencing while they're trying to perform the best vocal they ever perform in their entire life, hopefully. That's what you got to do, whatever that is. So if that's cool vocal effects, or if it's bone dry, whatever, I try and, if I don't know the artist or the vocalist or something, I try and ask them beforehand, hey, how do you like your voice? Like it soaking wet, really up front, loud headphones, quiet. Everybody's different, and I think that's what you got to realize. Everybody's different. Everybody wants different things, but nobody gets headphones put on their head until they've been on my head, and I go, yep, okay, that sounds great. Here you go.
Okay. That's good. That's very good. Okay, when you are critiquing a vocalist, so vocalist sings a passage, and it's all right. It's not what you want. They can do better. How do you speak to them?
Well, obviously, hopefully this is obvious. You try not to be negative, and you try and, instead of saying, hey, you're flat, say, let's get one more take, pay attention to your pitch a little bit, subtle offhand things. You don't want to go after their weaknesses. You want to keep them, especially young or inexperienced vocalists. They're already probably nervous. They're already probably scared. They already think that they're being judged. So anything negative that you say is going to affect them. I think one of the most powerful things that I try and tell any vocalist that I work with is, it's just you and me in this room. Nobody else is here. Nobody's going to hear anything that you sing. By the time that I'm done, this will be comped, tuned. Everything is going to be perfect, and it's going to sound like you sang it one time, the best time you ever sang it in your entire life. And you have to trust me enough to get through that process, and you have to be, I want to hear mistakes. I want to hear where too far is. I want to hear where too much emotion is. I want to hear where, I don't think I don't think singers are good at pushing themselves to their absolute limits. I think most artists need somebody like me to go like, no, try it this way or do that, or, I don't believe you yet, or, make me really believe you, or put yourself in the middle of this movie and then sing it to me. Having an artist, I don't think it's easy for artists to be able to find that place in themselves. You need to be pushed. So I push.
Yeah.
Gently.
And of course you learn the person you're working with, and you kind of do a few tests here and there to see where their emotional stability is.
Sure.
Or do you pay a lot of compliments?
When they're deserved, yes.
Okay.
I try not to criticize without a solution. So, I'm not trying. So, like, I wouldn't just say you're not moving your mouth enough. I would say, move your mouth more. Overform your words. I want to see your mouth moving. Things like that. I would say that instead of, you're not opening your mouth enough. So I think there's a political and psychological way to kind of work a session, and you have to figure that out with every different vocalist and artist that you work with. And hopefully it's not, hopefully most people it's not a big psychological challenge. Most people are kind of the same or fall within a general range of normal working parameters. And occasionally you have the weird ones that you just, and thank God for the weird ones. That's what makes this industry tick. I mean, shit, that's usually my favorite vocal days, is the vocal days that I'm like, what the fuck just happened? So.
Was there ever a time where somebody just absolutely blew you away, that you weren't expecting it?
That I wasn't expecting it?
Somebody just came, knocked you off the chair.
Well, I mean, Ariana Grande, shit. That girl, we didn't know what to expect when we first met her, but to hear that girl sing for the first time was, you get a lot of people who are like, oh, work with my kid or work with my whatever. And then you have a 14, 15-year-old girl that steps up and was singing like that. And I was just like, okay, all right. It was amazing. Really incredible. And her acting chops at that age were so exceptional that anybody who doesn't think she's going to be a major Hollywood, actress, feature film star, she's going to have all of that. I think the sky's the limit for her. What's that?
When she decides she wants it?
Probably. I mean, she's doing SNL and she's crushing hosting SNL.
And
so
Jimmy Fallon, she's hilarious.
Right. Yeah. So she's doing all of the, all of those things. She's had 2 of her own TV shows. So I think she's laid all the groundwork. She's done live TV. She did like Hairspray, and she's done Broadway. Her range of acting experience is just exceptional. And her range of acting ability is just exceptional. And I think it's just a matter of time until she finds that perfect role that was just written for her to shine in, and then she'll just be the feature film actress. Yeah.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit here. Let's talk about scouting talent as a producer and developing your own talent. Now, for you, I know specifically that would be Des Rocs. So tell me about when you met Des Rocs, and then tell me about when you decided that you wanted to develop him and be his on-spec, I'm guessing that you're on-spec, but on-spec producer.
Yeah. So, Des Rocs, I'll just refer to him as Des Rocs. His name's Danny. Des Rocs used to be in a group called Secret Weapons on Epic Records. And I was hired to mix the Secret Weapons album, which I did. And then Brian Kierulf produced that album. Great work. And so when Des Rocs got dropped from Epic Records, L.A. Reid got the boot. L.A. signed them. Usually that's the kiss of death for an artist. So so they got dropped after L.A. left. And Des Rocs came out here, and well, he went back to his producer first, Brian Kiroff, and he said, I have this idea for this Des Rocks project. I want to be the front man. It's a solo project. It's this style of music. It's this, this is what I've always wanted to do. And Brian said, well, I can't do it. And Des said, well, who should? And Brian said, well, the guy that mixed your record's the other best producer around. Go talk to him. So he came out, played us a bunch of songs. Me and Brent were like, nothing finished. It was all a bunch of skeletons and ideas, but you could tell that the artistry there and the ideas and the sense of him, like I'll keep going back to this word artistry, the sense of him knowing where he wanted to go, how he wanted to get there, who he was, and then of course the level of songs and songwriting and ideas were all just so, they were all super raw, but it was all just so like exceptionally laid out, going like, okay, anybody with half a vision can see where the three of us could take this project, and the three of us basically produce it together. A lot of times, it might just be me and Danny, or me and Brent, or Danny and Brent, or the three of us all in one room together. But we're all just constantly just bouncing ideas back and forth off of each other and building records. Sometimes Danny will start a record at his apartment and bring it in. Sometimes we'll start an idea from scratch on the spot here. You just never know how it's going to go. But it's been for those. So I'll back up. For anybody who does not know who Des Rocks is, look him up on Spotify. The first single we ever put out on Spotify was March of 2018. It's March of 2019. We've passed 20 million Spotify streams. We've been #1 on every big playlist, rock playlist. We've done a ton of licensing. It's been an amazing, amazing journey and ascent. And we've all been really lucky, but it all started with the music. The music has to be great, and we have great music. And we have a great artist who knows who he is and what he wants. He's a great live performer. He's just got every, every aspect of what a producer would want in an artist. He's got. So it usually isn't that succinct a combination of elements that you have to work with as a producer. Fortunately, in this time it is. But I don't know if I'm really answering your question about.
You are. So he came to you, and it was immediately apparent that he was not a client. This would be someone that you wanted to take on.
For sure. That was how it was brought to me. It was brought to me as, Epic Records paid me for the mixing. Des Rocks didn't, or Danny didn't pay me to mix his album. So, he came out and he's like, looks like we're going to get dropped. I have this idea for this other project. He's not the singer in Secret Weapons. So he wanted to do a solo project where he was the lead singer. I'm not, there are much more extenuating details, but this is the abridged version. And now I can't even remember what the question was.
But it was clear that he was not a customer. And
he came out. Yeah, he came out and he said, "I'm looking for somebody to produce my record on spec." And he offered me, terms, which I think is the reason that we got to where we are now. Because I think in many ways it's the fairest, most balanced production deal that I've done. And it's and I'm not going to get into details, but basically it's empowered the three of us to, we all basically have ownership in the project, and it's empowered the three of us to feel like we're a part of something building from the ground up, that if it becomes successful, we will also become successful. And within a year's time, we're already monetizing very well independently. Nobody's getting rich yet, but I think we've earned, the Des Rocks train has earned a lot more than we ever thought it would at this point, which is hopefully a great indicator of, what we can be looking forward to as it grows into the future. But most don't go this well. So, you know, but a lot of the reason is we have a great artist who knows how to get himself out there, and who can play great live and who can network and, who's smart and has a brain and who's a genuinely good person. All of those things matter in artist development. Nobody wants to develop somebody that they don't get along with. I certainly don't.
No. Okay, so I know that you said you're married. How do you manage your life and home balance with your work schedule? We put 12-hour days in. How do you manage that?
Well, that's the thing. Like, I work from home, so I'm always around. But we work on different floors, so we don't see each other all that much. But that's the thing. I get 7-8 hours of sleep a night. I try not to fuck with my health anymore. I highly encourage any creative to get at least a solid 7 every night. You will be much more creative, I assure you. But if you get 8 hours of sleep at night and work a solid 12-hour day, that still leaves 4 hours to hang out. That's a lot of hang time. So, it's just all on how you budget your time. I try and make time every single day that I'm here to spend with my wife, and I try to always remember that I'm half of something that has nothing to do with this world. Even though of course she's in this world with me, but my marriage is something different.
I went to Mix with the Masters and I was with JJP. He said to me in our time together that he considers music to be the other woman, and said that it was very difficult for him to find a woman in his life to be his partner who understood his marriage to the music.
Right. I can understand that. I can understand how or why people can get there. For me and my wife have been together since the dawn of time. So she, before any of these great things happened, it was her and me. And I always thought I would be the broke ass musician that she would be supporting. So it just so happened to kind of not work out that way, thank God. But I always thought that was the way it would go. But she's always been there for the long studio sessions and the nights on the studio floor and having to drive into the city to bring me a change of clothes and a toothbrush and some fucking deodorant, and or my medication if I'm on antibiotics or some shit. And sometimes you just get stuck at the studio for extended periods. And so she was a witness to that whole every transition through this entire industry. She's been right there. So it's easy for me to try and make time every day for something like that. But I think people just need to carve out perspective. It's easy perspective. If you want to make it, there's time. There are days where I'm too busy and I tell her I've got to work all night. But mostly I try and 2, 3, 4 hours a day.
What's sacred? Like, what's the thing that you will not cross?
With her?
Yeah, with either the studio or the relationship.
Nothing comes to mind. I mean, I've canceled vacations for clients. I've flown across the country at a moment's notice for clients. I've flown across the sea at a moment's notice for clients. I mean, this business is some really crazy shit, and sometimes it requires odd things. And fortunately, she's always been there, so she just sees it as like, oh, there's another odd thing, okay, and she can just roll with it. People who aren't a part of this industry and don't have that backstory, I think it's really hard to do relationships because it's such an insane business that we work in. Yeah.
I understand that. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump back into Des, because I'm just going through a list of my questions that I've got here.
Sure.
If I was going to develop an artist the way you're developing Des, what are you seeing right now, 2019, summer 2019? What are you seeing
working as far as pushing an artist out into the world? What's working?
That's not my job. My job ends at the studio. So I have some experience with that. It's not my forte.
Okay.
Clearly, we have our main platform so far has been Spotify. I know he has a PR agent, but most of our success has come from personal relationships and the fact that at least we think we have great music. And because you could know, like, the head of rock at Spotify has been a huge supporter of ours. Everybody knows who that is. But the thing about it is, they wouldn't be a huge supporter of ours if they didn't love the fucking music. So step one is make exceptional music, and music that's every bit as good as everything else in the marketplace. I don't think anybody who didn't know who DrFord was would listen to him and not think that he's either a major label or major label caliber artist, because we've made his project the exact same way that we would make, you know, the biggest budget major label record that we possibly could. So making great music, then getting it to the gatekeepers in streaming land, I think is crucially important. There's a bunch of ways to do that. There's lists, there's contacts, there's friends, there's, you know, however you got to do it. The other thing is that you should assume that you'll make zero money for a very long time. Again, with DrFord, we've been really lucky. We've been doing a ton of licensing. The thing about that is there's never been a time where any of us have said, man, this would be, you know, we should do this because it would work great in a movie, or we've always just made the best songs we can possibly fucking make. We're not trying to make sync music. But the reality is that whatever we're doing really, really connects with music supervisors very strong. So we've been licensing a lot, and we've been monetizing the project really well. And most of it has been invested back into the project. And we're just, you know, trying to keep growing it. DrFord is out on tour right now with Grandson. They just played New York City this week, Philly, DC. I think they're ending in Seattle. So they're fixing to crisscross the nation again. Let's see, artist development. I think one of the other things that's really important about it is to know, I think it's not nearly as important at all to put out an album or even an EP now as it used to be. With DrFord, we put out one single every 2 months for the last year, and that gave us 7 singles March to March. And now we just hit 20 million Spotify streams. I think we're averaging around 170 to 180,000 streams a day. And now we're going to go to a 1 song a month release schedule, I think. Hopefully the numbers will just keep picking up. They've never done anything but go up. So, you know, but they've never done anything but go up because in between each release, the three of us are working our asses off to try and top whatever we just put out, or to try and, you know, craft the absolute best next thing to put out that we possibly can. And I think a lot of people take development projects not that seriously, or the artists or they just don't have the talent or the time or the facilities or whatever to, you know, to make music that good. But you got to understand that the competition is people like me. You know, people like me are out there developing artists on the level that we're developing DrFord, and there's many people like me out there doing it. So if you're in a position that you want to take on an artist and develop them, you know, there's certainly plenty of people getting signed every year, but understand where the bar is set is, and our people are used to you know, hearing a level of project from somebody like me coming in on a regular basis. That certainly doesn't mean that everything that they hear is that level, but you know, therein lies your competition. So be aware of it.
Okay, so if the music is good enough, what's the best way to approach A&Rs to get projects signed? And I say that because during the break, after you went offline before you came back, I answered a question on there, and I talked about how a fan base is your most important currency that you have as a young artist.
It
Can
is.
you expound on that?
The best way to contact an A&R guy is to not contact an A&R guy. And I don't say that facetiously at all. That is the absolute truth. If not validity to our people. In the Des Rock situation, that was never, ever, 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 ever our plan. Our plan from before we put anything out was, let's make music so great that they find us. And that's what's happened. That's how you get a deal worth signing in 2019. You don't get a deal worth signing in 2019 unless you're really lucky. It does happen. But you don't get a deal worth signing in 2019 unless you've already got, unless you're just exceptionally gifted, or you're doing real numbers, or you know, there's some component that's like, you know, okay, shit, we need this and everybody's gonna want it.
What does that look like?
What's that?
What does that deal look like?
As in what way?
Well, like on the contract. Like for those of us who have
Right.
never had a major label contract or done that, what does that deal look like? Like,
I mean, well, there's so many different facets to it. And honestly, they must be changing with the times, because it's so much less important to put an album out now. And contracts used to be album based. It used to be 5 albums or 7 albums or whatever. And I don't know. I haven't seen one lately. So I'm guessing that it's more like a certain number of song commitment or a certain period of time or a certain, you know, I don't know what the things are now, but you know, the record company wants to own and control as much as they possibly can, and you want to own and control as much as you possibly can. And so the hope is that you find a company that really believes in what you do, not just believes that you can be successful, but actually believes in what you do. And then the terms of the deal don't matter as much. I think that's one thing that a lot of people get caught up in, like, oh, they just did $1 million deal, like, oh, you know, such and such just did $1 million publishing deal. You know what that says to me? That says to me that if that person doesn't write $1 million song, they're going to be stuck in that publishing deal the rest of their life. That's what that tells me. Or that tells me that the writer makes such an exceptional amount of publishing income already that wasn't really a big bet for that publisher to make, that they're fairly confident that they're going to make their money back. But that's the thing. Like, a deal in advance is a loan. You pay the shit back. The only way they can get it back is through income from you know, publishing or recording or whatever you're signing to. But you know, I try to think of deal terms, length of contract, you know, how much, what percentages of what am I getting, you know, how much of a guaranteed marketing budget do I have, how much of a guaranteed tour budget do I have, how much of a guaranteed promotion budget, radio, whatever. You know, I want to see real numbers. I care about things that are promised in writing, as far as contracts go. So the more juice you have as an independent artist, the more of those things you can kind of write your own ticket on, to an extent. I mean, everybody, you know, the thing is, you gotta find a partner in a label and you gotta realize it's a partnership. They want to make money. That's their primary job, make money. Your primary job is to make music. Their job is to make money off of your music. So, and then give you some of that money. You got to understand it's a partnership, and, you know, and both need to be working for that goal. And a lot of people, I think, don't really look at it that way. So I think that's all I got for you for contracts.
Okay, so we're closing into our time frame. We got about 6 minutes left. So
Cool.
this is the perfect opportunity for you to inspire our audience. Give us your closing thoughts on just the whole thing, like what it takes to exist.
Well, I mean, I guess I can only speak from my own perspective and my own, what I've tried to accomplish and what I've tried to do in my career, which I'm still not where I want to be. You know, I still have a ways to go. And I think that's one of the things that has driven me as far as it has driven me is that I'm not satisfied. I'm very happy, but I'm not happy with where I am in my career per se. Or I think the better way to describe it is I'm really happy with where I am in my career right now. If I'm still in the same place a year from now, I'm not going to be as happy. So I'm in a position where I constantly want to not rest on my laurels, not kick back and relax any more than I normally would. I want to figure out how to make even better records than I'm making now. So I think that's the whole thing. With me is I want to be wherever the top is at whatever I'm doing, whatever the best is at whatever I'm doing, that's where I want to be. So I'm going to keep striving to get there. And I assume that that's probably just going to be like a lifelong, whatever. And I'm going to be feeling the same way and saying the same things 10 years from now. And that's fine as long as 10 years from now, I'm much further than I am here. So, so far so good. I have no complaints about how things have gone.
What do you say to the people who think that music isn't a competition?
Oh, this is war. I mean, this is on the daily. I think one of the things that prepared me best for a career in music was playing soccer. Growing up playing soccer and being on teams that wanted to win, and being on teams that did win. I think that's crucially important, because if you're on a winning team, when you lose, it fucking sucks. You don't ever want to lose. But if you're on a team that normally loses, you probably get used to it. It's not that big of a deal. You're not expected to win. But if you're on a winning team, you're expected to win, and you expect to win. And losing sucks. And I don't want to be that. I've felt that. I feel it all the time in the music industry. It's more losing than winning. And, but I think that drive and that determination and that hunger has kind of carried through, my entire life. And when you turn on the radio and you hear your shit on the radio, it's fun. It's a fucking great feeling. When you wake up and you've had some sort of an impact on music in general, that's a cool feeling. So it makes all of the hours that you worked for it not that big of a deal. It makes all the hours that I'm going to have to keep working for it not that big of a deal. So I don't think about those when I turn on the radio. Like that's the one thing that I absolutely guarantee any of you guys is, if say you put 100 miserable hours into a fucking song and you hate that song, but you turn the radio on and you heard that song, you're not going to remember those 100 hours. You're just going to smile and fucking nod your head and be like, holy shit, I worked on this. This is amazing. And that's, I think that's the thing we all fight for.
Awesome. Okay, last question.
Hit me.
As someone who absolutely knows what's going on and what it takes to make a commercial mix, what it takes to produce, what it takes to perform, what do we need to avoid on the internet?
Opinions. I see people chase opinions like crazy, and the thing of, I'm not saying you shouldn't listen to opinions. What I do is, when somebody critiques something I've done, I listen to everything that's said, I absorb what connects with me, and I make a decision how to move forward. I think a lot of people just chase. They're so, if you're an artist and you haven't really been acknowledged yet, and all of a sudden an A&R guy tells you, "Oh man, if you just changed this and that, it would be so much better." That A&R guy most likely forgot about you 10 minutes later, and now you are changing your entire shit because of something that they off the cuff said in a meeting because they were trying to get out of there. So, and I've seen this time and time again, artists just chasing whatever people say. You got to have, I think as a mixer and a producer and any kind of creative has to have that same kind of know who you are. I think with artists, it's most important to know who you are and be that. As a producer or mixer, it's most important to know who the artist is and help them be that. But I don't know. I think I forgot the original topic, but I think I've covered it.
There's something here in Nashville that I call the thumbprint effect. And it's interesting because you have all these kind of mid-level people that are independent managers, independent A&R, independent promoters. And the thing they tell all the artists is, as if their thumbprint would go on your record, then it would be successful. And it's like, I kind of tell my clients, it's this battle to see like who you should believe, because every single one of them is going to tell you that if they put their thumbprint on it, now that's what it needed to be successful.
Right.
You're kind of like who do you believe? Who are you going to say?
Right. Well, I think you have to assess every opinion you get for what it is, and that same A&R guy that told you if you just changed X, Y, and Z, you would be, you'd be signed here. Though that might be incredibly valid, and those might be insights that are perfect, or they might be shit that somebody just said completely off the cuff. And the danger is you have to have the analytical ability to pull in all sorts of information, absorb it, connect it, and make a decision. And that's just kind of hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, if it was easy, everybody would do it.
If it was easy, everybody would do it. And my girlfriend said to me once, as a vocalist, she's had to learn how to accept the things that resonate. Because when someone does give you opinion and it hits you, and you're like, oh, I think that's right, you have to take it, right?
That is crucial. Absolutely crucial.
The opposite, if someone says something and it absolutely does not resonate, and you're like, no, I can't own that, right?
Right.
You have to just let it go like water off a duck's back, right?
It's exactly the thing. You can't chase what other people think you should be, but anybody with credibility or anybody that you respect who offers an opinion, just listen to it, and then just ask yourself what they said, if it rings, and change or don't. And but yeah, it's exactly like you said. Now the unfortunate part of that is that most people who want to have a career in this business won't. It's just there just aren't enough slots. But I've seen plenty of people before they really got any kind of notoriety that I thought, you know what, this person has a really bona fide shot at a good career in this, and then they did. And I think anybody who wants this can have it. You just got to be very honest with yourself as to what your strengths and weaknesses are, how to maximize your strengths and reinforce your weaknesses or avoid them, how to put yourself into the right position to succeed. And if you're in Des Moines, Iowa, and you're wondering why you're not getting major label mixes, I got news for you. You know, it's kind of a lot of that kind of stuff. So I don't know what else. What else you got for me? What
I
else?
think you said it, and I think that we're at our time. So plug your websites for me.
Audio School Online. It's just me. I do a ton of tutorials. I'll teach you basically everything I know about mixing records. I don't hold anything back. Music School Online is for instruments, guitar, bass, drums, vocals, piano, and a ton of music theory as well. All at your own pace, just online. And my mixing site is iproducemusic.com. That's my production site as well, of course. But usually I don't get production work off of the website. I get word of mouth gets you production work. You know, at my level, that's how it comes through, usually. So yeah, that's my Instagram is Ken Lewis Audio School Online.
Awesome.
And that's all I got.
Well, for everybody watching, I really appreciate you guys coming and spending this time with us. Once again, I'm Dr. Ford. I'm going to keep doing these interviews as long as I got people to interview and they want to hang out with me. Make sure you mash that donate button again this entire broadcast.
Oh, yeah. Anybody who's donated, thanks. It's obviously a great cause.
Yeah, we've already got $131 in, and it'll stay on this
We'll take it.
video. We bought everybody lunch. It's a great cause. Mission 22 is benefiting veterans and suicide rates. So make sure you do that. If you don't know about it, go to the website, do your research. Make sure you go to Ken's website, pay for his darn thing, learn all the stuff. I can tell you, I've seen a bunch of his videos. They're flipping awesome. His credit
It's cheap.
is ridiculous.
I charge almost nothing.
It's stupid good. For all of the sea of stuff that's out there, you should just go straight to the source and get Ken for it. And for everybody else, thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the next broadcast. Ken, thank you so much.
Sounds great. Thanks, guys.
Have a great day. All right. Bye-bye.
See you later.